When he performed what we call miracles, he was demonstrating a vessel so coherent, so fully integrated, that it operated on a completely different set of physics than the one his observers took for granted. And when he told his followers, "These things and greater will you do," he was not setting himself apart from the rest of us. The Gospel of Thomas, one of the most important texts recovered at Nag Hammadi, preserves what may be the most precise and most misunderstood set of instructions for this transformation ever committed to writing. Encoded within the architecture of the human form is a capacity so radical that throughout history, the knowledge of it has been obscured, diluted into ritual, or dismissed entirely. The capacity to transform the material body into light, also known as spiritual ascension. This was not understood by these traditions as mere metaphor. The esoteric knowledge preserved across the Egyptian mystery schools, the Taoist internal alchemists, the advanced yogic lineages, and the inner circle teachings of Yeshua himself, all of them point toward the same recognition. The human form is a vessel with the potential to undergo a profound energetic shift into what they called a body of light, a conductor of the infinite, a vessel capable of holding and transmitting frequencies that exist far beyond the material spectrum. What makes this claim extraordinary is not that one tradition preserved it. It is that traditions separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, with no easy means of contact or communication, arrived at the same destination. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition calls it the rainbow body, and it is the most extensively documented case of this phenomenon in the historical record. Within the Vajrayana lineages, the achievement of the rainbow body was not treated as mythology. It was regarded as the expected outcome of a fully completed practice. The lineage records what they claim to be over 160,000 practitioners who achieved some degree of this transformation across centuries. In 1998, Father Francis Tiso, a Roman Catholic priest and academic, travelled to eastern Tibet to investigate one such case, the death of Khenpo Acho. He collected first-hand testimony from witnesses who described rainbow-coloured light surrounding the body as it diminished over the course of several days. He was not an initiate of that tradition. He was a scholar, and what he found was sufficient to publish. Taoist internal alchemists pursued the same destination through a different architecture. They called it the immortal, or yang spirit body, also known as the diamond body, an imperishable energetic structure forged through a lifetime of precise internal refinement. Similarly, the Egyptian mystery schools oriented their entire initiatory framework around the Akh, the luminous, immortal form that the practitioner was expected to achieve through the completion of specific inner work. Then we have the advanced yogic lineages of India who described the pranava deha, the body of sacred sound and light. In southern India, the 19th century Tamil saint Ramalinga Swamigal, known as Valala, reportedly underwent a progressive transformation in which his physical body became increasingly translucent over the final years of his life. In January of 1874, he entered a small room, instructed his followers not to open it, and was never seen again. When authorities eventually forced the door open, the room was empty. Next, we have Carlos Castaneda's entire body of published work, spanning over a decade of accounts documenting his apprenticeship under the Yaqui seer Don Juan Matus that was oriented toward this same transformation. Whether one takes Castaneda at face value or reads him as a philosophical architecture, what he describes strongly echoes themes found in what the Tibetan, Egyptian, Taoist, and Gnostic traditions preserved, arriving at the same destination. Castaneda's work has been vigorously contested, and the questions surrounding it deserve serious engagement rather than casual dismissal in either direction, which is why we're going to address them directly in the final video of this series. Different names, different maps, highly similar territory. There was no common manual circulating between these cultures. No clear evidence of direct transmission fully explains how a Tibetan yogi, an Egyptian priest, a Taoist immortal, and a seer in the deserts of Mexico all arrived at the same level of precision, each developing their own repeatable path to the same result. We often dismiss cross-cultural patterns as universal archetypes, common psychological needs projected onto different stories. That works for flood myths or hero narratives. But this isn't a story. This is a technical claim about a specific transformation of the material body, complete with detailed protocols, stages of development, and observable signs of progress. When separate traditions, divided by oceans and millennia, describe the same destination with this level of precision, archetypes are no longer enough. Here are two possibilities that account for this convergence, and both of them are extraordinary. Either there existed, at some point in the distant past, a single source tradition that predates all of the lineages we can trace historically, from which each inherited fragments through channels we can no longer document. Or this knowledge is inherent in the architecture of the human form itself, and any tradition which goes deep enough into the direct investigation of consciousness and the body will eventually discover it, the way separate civilizations independently discovered mathematics, because mathematics is woven into the structure of reality. If that is the case, then the body of light is not a cultural invention or a belief system. It is a latent capacity, built into the design, waiting to be recognized by anyone who develops the depth of perception to see it. Either way, the consistency across traditions is itself a form of evidence that deserves far more weight than it has been given. And then there are the Gnostic teachings, which occupy a unique position in this convergence because they sit at the crossroads of several of these lineages at once. The Gnostic texts that survived, most of them recovered from the Nag Hammadi library in Egypt in 1945, date as manuscripts to the 2nd through 4th centuries of the Common Era. But the teachings they preserve are almost certainly older, drawing from currents of Jewish mysticism, Egyptian initiatory knowledge, and a direct transmission from Yeshua's inner circle that illusory systems spent centuries trying to erase. The Gnostics did not emerge in a vacuum. They emerged at a moment in history when the Egyptian mystery tradition was still alive, when Jewish mystical practice was undergoing its own radical transformation, and when the living memory of Yeshua's teaching had not yet been fully overwritten by the demiurge hierarchy. They stood at the intersection, and what they preserved reflects that. What makes the Gnostic contribution distinct from the Tibetan, Taoist, and yogic traditions is that the Gnostics did not merely describe the light body as a destination. They described the architecture of what prevents it. They mapped the flawed emanation, the layered system of density that keeps the perceiver locked in a state too contracted to hold the frequencies the transformation requires. And within the texts they buried in the Egyptian desert, they preserved fragments of the very protocols Yeshua transmitted for moving through that architecture and out the other side. This is where Yeshua's teaching enters the convergence, not as a religious figure, but as a master of the same transformation every one of these traditions pursued. When he spoke of the kingdom that is within and all around us, he was not offering a moral reward for good behavior. He was describing a state of the vessel in which the limitations that seem absolute from within objective reality simply no longer apply. When he performed what we call miracles, he was demonstrating a vessel so coherent, so fully integrated, that it operated on a completely different set of physics than the one his observers took for granted. And when he told his followers, "These things and greater will you do," he was not setting himself apart from the rest of us. The Gospel of Thomas, one of the most important texts recovered at Nag Hammadi, preserves what may be the most precise and most misunderstood set of instructions for this transformation ever committed to writing. These sayings have been widely interpreted by popular teachers as philosophical reflections on oneness, non-duality, or the dissolution of the ego. And while those readings are not entirely wrong, they miss the target by a wide margin because they strip the teachings of their actual objective. Yeshua was not offering philosophy. And the popular misinterpretation of these sayings has done more to obscure that objective than any act of obfuscation, because at least when the texts were hidden, people knew something was missing. Now the texts are available and people read them and walk away thinking they already understand, which is a far more effective form of obscuration. And this is the mystery at the centre of all of it. Not that spirit descends into matter, which is remarkable enough, but that the vessel of flesh could become the birthplace of the light body. There is a line preserved in the Gospel of Thomas that captures the full weight of this recognition. If the flesh came into being because of spirit, that is a marvel. But if spirit came into being because of the body, that is a marvel of marvels. Yeshua appears to have been staring directly at the same architecture every one of these traditions preserved. He was speaking in awe of it. The body may not be the prison, but the instrument. And the initiation into the light body, the real initiation, not the version that has been watered down in weekend workshops and guided visualizations, is the most demanding transformation a perceiver can undertake. But what exactly were these traditions pursuing? And why did they consider it the magnum opus of human existence? Every one of these lineages understood the light body as the completion of what incarnation was designed to accomplish. The body is not an obstacle to be endured on the way to some disembodied paradise. It is the crucible in which something permanent can be forged from something transient. The purpose was immortality, but achieving immortality as we would understand it was not the end of the pursuit. It was entering into an existence unbound by the limitations of this world entirely. An existence in which the perceiver, freed from the constraints of material density, gains access to ranges of experience and possibility that are simply invisible from within the current condition. Castaneda called the final achievement of his lineage's discipline the meeting with infinity, the opening of perception itself into something limitless, where the full spectrum of what consciousness is capable of experiencing becomes available. That is what drew these masters to dedicate entire lifetimes to the work. And Yeshua demonstrated exactly this. The resurrection accounts, whatever one makes of them historically, describe a body that had undergone precisely the transformation these traditions point toward. A form that appeared suddenly inside a locked room without passing through the door, that could be touched and yet was not confined to the limitations of ordinary flesh, and that vanished from sight in the middle of a conversation and materialized again elsewhere. A form that was recognizable and yet fundamentally changed, operating under a completely different relationship to space and matter than anything his followers had ever witnessed. But the traditions that preserved this knowledge understood that the light body is not a gift bestowed from above. It is an achievement of the vessel, a structural accomplishment that depends on specific conditions being met within the energetic architecture of the body itself. And on this spiritual journey, many seekers eventually encounter an invisible wall. The practices are there, the knowledge is accessible, the intention is sincere, and the work is producing genuine results. Things begin to surface, energy moves, awareness sharpens, and the path opens. But sustaining that opening demands something the vessel may not yet have to give. The seeker sits down to practice, and the practice works. But then the demands of a life already stretched beyond its resources close in. The momentum breaks, and the seeker starts and stops, each time touching something real, and each time unable to sustain the contact long enough for the transformation to take root. This is the cruelty of the wall. The very practices that would restore the vessel require energy that the vessel does not have because it has not yet been restored. The seeker needs surplus to sustain the path, but the path is the very thing that would create the surplus. And so they remain caught, perpetually one sustained effort away from breakthrough, but never quite able to gather the resources to make it. This is why so many of the ancient Gnostics developed such hostility toward the material world. They had the gnosis to recognize that the architecture of this reality keeps the perceiver trapped. And while they possessed their own systems for the integration work, and some among them almost certainly completed it, the sheer difficulty of executing that work within a reality designed to obstruct it drove many of them to despise the world they were trying to transform from within. Their contempt was the consequence of profound vision met with an almost impossible degree of resistance, which is precisely what Yeshua's teaching of making the two into one was designed to cut through. And that teaching, as I mentioned previously, has been profoundly misunderstood. What the Gospel of Thomas actually contains is not a collection of mystical aphorisms about the unity of all things. It is a technical roadmap, a sequence of instructions for the transformation of the vessel into something capable of holding eternal life. The popular reading collapses these teachings into comfortable philosophy, but the actual message is far more specific, far more demanding, and far more consequential than anything popular teachers have described. In my next video, we are going to open that roadmap and walk through it, saying by saying, and reveal what Yeshua was actually instructing his inner circle to do, not as theology or metaphor, but as protocol. The light body is not a myth preserved in the ancient world and lost to time. It is a living possibility, encoded in the architecture of the vessel each of us inhabits, and the instructions for activating it survived. If that resonates with something you already sense but have never heard spoken aloud, then stick around. There is more to come, and what follows will go further than this introduction could take us. Welcome to The Resonance.